We have muted everyone's microphones, but there'll hopefully be some time at the end for questions. If you do have questions during the webinar, please just put them in the chat and we'll try and get to all of them. If we don't get to all of them today, we'll put the email out there so you can send a question directly to the email. Yeah, so we have divided this webinar into two parts. So this is the one for on and off license holders. And we'll get cracking into it. Awesome. So the purpose for today is really to explain some possible changes to the draft local alcohol policy that has to be reviewed every 6 years, and also to get your feedback both on these changes and also anything else that you think might be working, might not be working with the current local alcohol policy. So here's a little overview of what we're covering today. So just a quick overview of what a local alcohol policy is. So we're on the same page, sharing what has happened so far to get to this point. And also there will be time later, like I said, for questions. And also very important, we'll probably cover this point a couple of times today. This is just very early stages, so nothing final has been decided, and there will be another chance for everyone to have their say on the draft local alcohol policy later in the year. So what is a local alcohol policy? So councils get given the power to make a local alcohol policy through the Sale and Supply of Alcohol Act 2012. And that is really a way for local communities to have their say how alcohol regulation operates in their district. And the purpose of this is really to ensure the sale and supply and the consumption of alcohol is done safely and responsibly, and that alcohol-related harm is minimised. And here's just a bit of a spider's web to show you as it can be quite a complicated system. You can see the local alcohol policy sitting there in the orange box. So that it feeds in, you talk to the community and the license holders, and then this feeds into what the district licensing committee has to have regard to. So it's really a way of getting that local view out to the district licensing committee, who is the final authority on licenses. So they really make the decisions. This is just, yeah, our way of saying this is how we'd like to see alcohol managed in Waipa.
So for those of you who are familiar with the local alcohol policy will know it's not a huge document, and the main reason for that is because whilst the government sees it as the tool for the communities to put forward how they would like licensing activities managed within the local communities, the actual scope that the local alcohol policy can have regard to is relatively limited. So it covers off the rules around where licensed premises can be located. So it'll be looking at things like actual physical or geographical areas where premises can be, how close they can be to each other, talks about the relationship between licensed premises, sensitive sites, and it looks at the overall number of licenses within an area. It can set maximum trading hours. So essentially you have the option of either going for default hours under the Act or having local hours, and that's the mechanism the local alcohol policy puts in place. It does set some discretionary conditions for licensed premises. So an example that most licensees will have most licensees will have on their licenses at the moment is a discretionary condition to have a host responsibility policy that's regularly updated and is the basis of training. And one-way door restrictions is the other thing that a local alcohol policy can cover. So at the moment, our policy covers off all of those based on the different license groups.
So and sorry, Cal. Yep.
Dive on in if you were going to add to that.
No, you're good.
So as you'd expect when it's a power that government is giving council, there's quite a lot of process sitting behind the scenes. So it's optional whether we have a local alcohol policy, and this council has decided in the early stages of the Act that we would have one, and we worked our way through that process. It's got to be reviewed every 6 years, so that's the process we're currently in at the moment. We're required to consult with the police, licensing inspectors and medical officers of health, being the main agencies involved in the assessment of applications and the enforcement side of the requirements. We have to consider certain characteristics of our district, including the provisions of the district plan and other matters that relate to some of the more physical requirements around where premises can be. And we're required to naturally consult with the license holders, being the main stakeholders in some of these. And again, that's the main focus of today. So what has happened so far? So obviously we've got a local alcohol policy. It's due for review. The main thing is to look and see what's changed since the last local alcohol policy was adopted. So the Act came in 2013, and by the time we'd worked our way through the local alcohol policy, it was adopted in 2015. Quite a bit's changed since then. So there's been quite a bit of research behind the scenes, looking at a whole range of different demographics, case law, and other things to inform us as to whether our policy is up to speed or not. We've then gone to council effectively with the question of, do they want to keep the local alcohol policy or not? And if they do, what changes do they want to have a look at? So that's effectively where we are now. Council has said yes, at this stage, their preference is to keep the local alcohol policy, but they agree that there are changes and updates that need to be made. So we're at the stage now of getting early feedback as to what some of those changes might be, what form they're going to take. So just reiterating the point that Mika made earlier, this is not the final document we're talking about today. This is getting early feedback from the main stakeholders in the industry that is going to inform our draft. So once we've finished these webinars and concluded the rest of the early consultation, we will be pulling the draft together, which will then go out for the formal consultation. So this is about trying to get that document in a state that's acceptable to the main parties, captures everyone's ideas, and then can go through and be commented on by the public in general. And most of the changes in the local alcohol policy won't affect existing licensed premises. The main exceptions being the hours, if they were to change, or if the one-way door policy was to change. But any of the stuff around locations and proximity to other premises, if a licensee and a license are already established, then those factors won't be in play. Those will only apply to new license applications.
Cool. So we'll crack into some proposed changes. So again, this is just the draft. So a lot of the changes that we're proposing is mainly around trying to make the current policy easier to understand and just clearer in general. So it's not really any new things being put in there. It's taking existing things and clarifying what is actually meant by them. And this is to make it easier for license holders, the general public, and the DLC to actually understand what the purpose of these points are. So adding in a couple of definitions. So for example, just things that should really be in there already, the definition of alcohol. So it's just the same as what's in the Act. Yeah, duty manager, remote sale, all things that are already defined in the Act, and we're just putting this into the local alcohol policy. Also clarifying some wording and concepts. So for example, currently there is an area where it refers to where where licensed premises are allowed to be located, and it refers to areas that allow commercial activities. And we've just changed this to a permitted zone. So it says the same thing, but it's a slightly cleaner concept, and it aligns better with the district plan. Some other general changes. So they're, again, just changing the wording, using the wording from the Act, using sensitive facilities, and we have included a couple more sensitive facilities. So this is a rehabilitation treatment centre, marae, and community facilities. Community facilities are only for off licenses. And this is really in respect to how close licensed premises can be to these places. So it's not changing the existing ones, which are a school, early childcare facility, a place of worship. It's just adding in rehabilitation treatment centre, marae, and for off licenses, community facilities. So some specific changes that we're proposing for on licenses. So you can see at the top there's the, so the black is the original current text and the red is what's proposed to be changed. So the trading hours for hotel, class 1 restaurant, other on-licensed premises listed in section 5.3 of the Sale and Supply Alcohol Fees Regulations 2013 with a weighting of 15 or more, or tavern. So changing it from 9 a.m. to 1 a.m. To 2 a.m. So just bringing it back an hour. And there really aren't that many premises already licensed to operate till 2. So hoping that it doesn't actually impact or make a huge difference. But this is one of the things that fell out of consulting with the elected members and the regulatory agencies. So just as a class 1 restaurant, just to clarify, in case not quite sure what those are. Oh, sorry, I just lost my page. So class 1 restaurant means a restaurant that has or applies for an on license and has, in the opinion of the territorial authority for council, a significant separate bar area. And B, in the opinion of council, operates that bar area at least one night a week in the manner of a tavern. And the next part, the section 5.3, that's basically what it says there: a class 1 restaurant, nightclub, tavern, adult premises. And they all have a weighting of 15 or more. And that's all defined in the Act where these weightings come from.
And if anyone's uncertain as to what their weighting is, that's something that we can confirm. So those of you who are managers and staff, perhaps who aren't involved in the actual application process, when an application comes in, each premises is categorised based on its risk weighting as to what type of licence and what fee is charged. So that's where that comes from. And the theory being the more higher risk of premises in terms of its size, its activity, its hours, the higher fee and risk category that it sits in. So that's the link there. But this is looking at the premises that are at the higher end of the risk scale. The next one relates to these all relate to on licenses. Yeah. So the proposed change here is around one-way door restrictions. So at the moment, it's an option for the District Licensing Committee to apply one-way door policies around those parameters that you can see there: Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights for hotel or tavern premises. The current draft, based on the feedback to date, is to make that more of a requirement on certain premises on certain nights. So again, linking back to the risk categories that we just talked about, that there would be a requirement for one-way door policies for certain premises operating within those hours and at that risk level.
The next section only relates to off licenses, specific changes to these ones. One of the things that we're proposing to bring in is making it a requirement to put in a social impact assessment with your application. So this is only for applications or premises located outside the permitted zone. So that's outside that central business district. It's basically if you need a resource consent as well, you will need to do a social impact assessment. So it's sort of in line with what you'd need to be doing anyway if you were outside that zone. And it is exempting remote sellers, manufacturers, and sellers where principal business is not the sale of alcohol, as it says there.
So again, just reiterating that permitted zone is effectively an area where a license can be established straight away. So it's permitted under the district plan for commercial activities. So that covers the majority of licensed premises that are currently operating in the district. Small change in this one. Again, changing the reference to permitted zone. But in terms of where a premises relates to a sensitive site or community facility, the current wording referred to the site frontage directly bordering these other facilities. We've had a couple of hearings where that definition has proved particularly problematic, especially if licensed premises are on corner sites. What is the frontage? What is it directly bordering? What is it facing? Became a very challenging definition to work with. So trying to simplify it and make it easier for the licensing committee when they're considering these matters. So on the left is how the current local alcohol policy describes directly bordering. And the obvious challenge with that diagram is that it does not cover the sites on the same side as the subject premises that are quite obviously directly bordering that site. So that in itself is an error, a problem. So on the right is and the revised version of that diagram to try and make it clear what is being talked about when we're referring to directly borders. And so it might seem a pretty simple concept of what site directly borders another, but when you have intersections and roads in between, corner sites, etc., it's not necessarily as straightforward as it might seem. So again, it's an improvement that the licensing committee identified as being required as part of this review.
Some other proposed changes that came out of the consultation that we recently had, where 126 people submitted on this. Is just basically a small survey asking 3 very specific questions relating to off licenses. And one of the ones that came back quite clear, that's where people wanted to see a change, is essentially putting a cap on new off licenses. So yeah, just want to emphasize this is not, it shouldn't affect existing off licenses. This is just for new ones, and it applies to a very specific area, which I'll show you in a moment on some maps. But yeah, will not apply to existing off licenses, premises subject to an off license in the previous 12 months. So basically, if you're switching owners, a special license, temporary license, and manufacturers. So the areas that's being proposed for this cap, the town centres. So first one is the Cambridge Town Centre. So if this did get implemented, it would essentially be from the date where the local alcohol policy is adopted. This is what we're running with at the moment. Keen to hear feedback on this, but the date it is adopted, the licensed premises that are operating on that date. So if it was adopted at the start of February, for example, Cambridge would have 8 off licenses in this area shown here. Just in Leamington Central would have 4 off licenses. Leamington North would have 2. Kieki would also have 2. So again, it's just within this border marked on the map. Te Awamutu Cambridge Road would have 2. And Te Awamutu Central would have 7. So again, just the off licenses that are already established in there. And this is definitely one where the feedback came quite strong in support of this approach. But yeah, keen to answer any questions if you have that.
And for the off license, yeah, similar submissions as for the on licenses in terms of hours. So again, we're limited into what we can consider in a local alcohol policy. The hours are always one of the more contentious issues in terms of trying to balance everybody's views. So at the moment, the feedback lends itself towards a change from 7 a.m. till 10 p.m. To 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. for licensed premises. And again, that is one of the changes that would affect existing and new licenses if that was to go through as proposed.
And this just sort of sums up where that change came from. A bit of the look at the feedback behind the scenes. You can see there was an indication that change is needed, and we've balanced this with the feedback that we received from the regulatory authorities. And yeah, it was really centered around that alcohol purchased after 9 p.m. Tends, not all of it, but there is good evidence that alcohol purchase after this time is more likely to contribute to alcohol-related harm. So that's where that comes from. But again, keen to hear your feedback on this. Yeah, from here, we're going to take any feedback that we get from license holders and have a look at that, see how it fits into the draft. We also, again, this is not the final version. The draft that results from all of this engagement will be put in front of elected members, and that will get workshopped again. Also go through a legal review, and then finally, maybe after August, we'll see how quickly we can get it. There will be an opportunity where the draft will go out to the public and anyone can submit on that. So that would be the final chance to make any changes, but we're hoping to catch any feedback before then. So now basically that we can incorporate into the draft at this stage. Yeah, after that, basically, is there any questions? And on the screen there is also our email if you'd prefer to ask a question later over email, but keen to hear your thoughts. I'll just see if there's anything in the chat so far. Otherwise, happy to perhaps open it up if anyone wants to speak or clarify any matters. Maybe Chantal can let people unmute themselves.
So I just saw one question pop up there about where are these videos going after we've finished them. So we've got one now on off licenses. We've got one later today for club and special license holders. They will be on Council's website under the alcohol licensing page.
There's another question. Why is 7 a.m. opening hour even considered? Perhaps Carl, I believe that comes out of the Act. Might be able to shed some more light.
Yes, so the Act defines default hours if you don't have a local alcohol policy. So when councils were going through this process 6, 7, 8 years ago, the default hours were probably where most councils started. And for off licenses in particular, there are quite a range of different premises operating within that category. So when we're talking off licenses, we aren't just talking bottle stores, we're also talking supermarkets, grocery stores, remote and online sellers. So sometimes it was a case of trying to find a balance. But we totally acknowledge that some of the things that are in the current LAP are out of date may not necessarily be suitable to today's environment. It was the first lap that we'd ever written, so it was never going to be perfect.
Cool, thank you for your comment, Sam. Yeah, wouldn't alcohol sold after 7 a.m. contribute more towards alcohol harm in the community than sold at 9 a.m.? The data that we've been given by the regulatory agencies definitely leans towards it being more of an issue at the end of the day. And then keeping in mind also when dealing with these hours, you have to balance when people do their grocery shopping. You know, the farmers that might come in at the start of the day, or those people that work shifts and might have to come in later in the day. So yeah, it really is going to be a balancing act, but the data definitely points to earlier closing times is better in reducing alcohol harm. Cool. Any other questions? Feel free to reach out. Excellent. Well, I hope that shed a bit of light on what's happening. And yeah, this video will be available on the website. We'll make it hopefully easy to find when you go on the Waipa District Council website. And there will also be a couple of other related documents that are currently up there. It's just under the little Have Your Say button on the main council website. And it also includes the background report that was written for this to give you a bit of an idea of what the other aspects are that council needs to consider, and also the initial feedback from the regulatory agencies. So yeah, if there's nothing else, I think we'll probably stop it there. But yeah, thank you very much.